Hey guys, welcome back. Now, one of the reasons why humans went on to dominate the world over every other species is our ability for pattern recognition. For example, by spotting the recurring seasons, we were able to pre-plan for winter well before it hits. Now, one of the big questions people want to know in crypto is, when is this next big mega breakout going to come? And so in this video, we'll be covering that question, and I'll also be sharing some very useful patterns that I've seen in the crypto market, including the 4-year pattern, which gives us a nice price prediction for the rest of this year. Then this current pattern that we seem to be stuck in, and also when the big breakout may likely be coming. And then we'll finish with my framework for navigating the next 12 months using another very useful pattern. Okay, so let's start with the big picture and number one of 3 very important patterns to help us answer the big burning questions. And so let's begin with the big picture. So going back to good old stock to flow, and this is a great chart because it's done an excellent job so far of mapping out the crypto market. We've had the average going through the middle. It is saying over time, and with the halvings, this is just increasing every 4 years. And then typical with retail investors are shooting the price to overbought, fear selling to oversold, and this just keeps repeating. Everyone charging in, shooting the price to overvalued, massive panic selling, people don't want to lose any money, going to massively undervalued. So for me, unless something major changes, I would say stock to flow is still in play. As of the latest data here, we can see we've got our first red dot, which means the halving has just occurred. Every single time so far in the nasty crashes, it's worked its way back to the average, back to the average line here. After being under, it worked its way back. After being under, it's worked its way back. And so despite everything going on right now, all the politics, all the pumps and dumps, all the meme coin mania, it's pretty much doing what it's exactly done. And so because of the halving, and now the miners have had their revenue cut in half, it just means to account for supply and demand, prices have to double, which is why we get these steep curves coming up. So unless something major changes, it's very likely by the end of 2024, it's going to be over $100,000 for Bitcoin. And obviously many of the altcoins will eventually follow suit. So now we're going to talk about a pattern which has jumped out to me as I've looked over what is going on so far and what's happened in the last 6 months. So this is a great one to share. So what do we see right now? Well, after a massive vertical move, we've pretty much just had sideways consolidation. And if anything, this is a downward sloping trend. So it's been slowly fading down. And it's been going on for quite a while. So if we pick this up, this is about the 1st of March, and this is all of March, and then going into April, all of April, and we're now into mid-May. So 2.5 months of sideways consolidation after a major move. So that's the point to remember. Now, have we seen this before? Well, check this out. We're now just going to zoom back and we're going to pick things up going from the cycle bottom. So after it had peaked and we'd had this nasty crypto winter bringing us all the way down, this is where the market bottomed, November 2022. So what do we see? Well, picking things up from the bottom, we have sideways consolidation, and this lasted pretty much most of November and December, and it's about mid-Jan. So there is 2.5 months right there. So already that's pretty much exactly what's happened right now. And then what happened? A massive vertical move. So after the vertical move, what happens? Well, we go back into sideways consolidation where we get some nice runs. It can't hold it. Some bigger runs. It can't hold it. And a flush out. But again, this is going from end of January into February into March. So again, what's that? 2.5 months ish. And then what happens? A massive move to the upside. So after this massive move to the upside, what happened? Well, lo and behold, sideways consolidation with a bit of a fading down. Does that ring a bell? And how long did this last? Well, that's 17th of March into April, into May. There's 2 months, and this one went quite far into June. But again, you're looking 2.5 months, maybe up to 3, close to 3 months. Again, fading down, and then what happens? A vertical move to the upside. And then what happens? Well, as we can see, more sideways consolidation. And this one looks like quite a big one. So going from June 20th into July 20th, into August the 20th, into September 20th, into October. And as again, you can see, it's not exactly sideways, but it's fading down again with a nice little flush out. But the trend each time has always been down, and this one was certainly the longest period. But then what happened? A vertical move to the upside, and this one was a very big move. But again, sideways consolidation, if anything, going down before another major move to the upside, bringing to where we are today. So what has just happened? As you can see, this is a pattern that has just kept repeating and repeating and repeating ever since the cycle bottom. And the actual major moves to the upside happen in a very short period of time. So this is the time where everyone gets excited and everyone makes lots of money in a short amount of time. But the price of this is that you've got to go through 2 to 3 months of boring sideways consolidation, which shakes out a lot of the weak hands. So a very interesting pattern, and the most likely scenario is that this just keeps repeating, which means we're probably very close to the next move to the upside. Now, the next really important pattern to share with you guys, which pretty much sets up the final piece of this video, which would be a roadmap for the next 12 months, is this. And it has to do with the halvings. So this is the first halving in 2012, so way back now. And the pattern is this. Around the time of the halving, it's very, very volatile. Some of the moves here going from a 27% drop right there. We have a nice move, 46% move there. A very short pullback here of around 10%. So around the time of the halving, it's very, very volatile. Now, if we just zoom out and take a look at the year after the halving, so this is November. And if we go to November, 1 year later, this is now what it looks like. And so the next thing to take note of is that the vast majority of the gains come right at the very, very end. So that's point 1. And in fact, this was the start of November a year later, and all of it came in just 1 month, which is crazy. And then the second major point is now look at all the volatility around the halving. It literally becomes irrelevant. all these moves of 20% up, 30% down, doesn't matter if it's Bitcoin, Ethereum, any of the altcoins, it all becomes irrelevant. Flipping over to the second halving, this is the one in 2016. And again, what do we see? Massive volatility. We have a nice move to the upside here of 80%. We have a very harsh correction, very quickly 30%, or if you stretch the time frame, a 40% correction. So a very similar pattern. Around the time of the halving, we have huge moves to the upside, sideways consolidation, big moves to the downside. It's very, very volatile, similar to what's going on now. But again, now let's take a look at the year after the halving. So we're going from July and May, June, July is about here. And it's the same pattern. The vast majority of this move over the next year came right in the last couple of months. If you split it into 4 quarters, the first quarter, nothing really happens. It begins moving in the second quarter. Third quarter, you get some nice runs. And again, by the time a year has gone by, what do we see? This huge volatility around the time of the halving becomes irrelevant. The prices here don't really matter 1 year later. So it's the same pattern. Most of the move comes at the end and everything you're going through right now becomes irrelevant. And the last one, very quick, just to show, this was the halving in 2020. What do we see? Massive volatility. Granted, this was the big COVID crash, but not even including COVID, we've got some nice corrections of 40%. We've got some nice runs of up to 65%. So it's the same pattern. Lots of volatility around the time of the halving. Again, let's zoom out 1 year later, May 2020. And May goes on to about here. So this first major top, it did take about a year. And again, the 2 points for the third time remain the same. Most of the move comes at the very, very end, and the huge volatility around the time of the halving becomes irrelevant. So now we have that pattern, we can predict what the next year is going to look like. So check this out. And so putting these patterns together, this is the mental framework that I'll be using to navigate the next 12 months. So instead of fretting about the up and down, about what's going on right now, here's my mental map. So we split it into quarters. And if we break the first 3 months into Q1, which will be the halving month, which was April, May, and June, which is pretty much what we're seeing right now, which is a lot of volatility. So that was last month, this current month, and even into next month. And we'll see by the end that it changes to irrelevant. Then the next 3 months, so this will be July, August, and September, we'll start getting some really nice big blowout moves to the upside. And don't forget the big corrections along the way. Then on to Q3, and this is October, November, and December. So this will be going through the US presidential cycle, and the polls are saying that it's likely going to be Trump over Biden, which means we're getting rid of someone who's clearly anti-crypto and replacing them with someone who is pro-crypto. So expect some even bigger moves. Bring us on to 2025, January, February, and March. And by the end of this time, prices will likely be 2 to 3 times higher than they are today. Remember, the biggest moves come at the very, very end. And so by January, February, March time into April next year, this is where what's going on right now, all this volatility becomes completely irrelevant. So hopefully this should help. Those were some great patterns from the crypto market, and it should bring a bit of peace of mind to what is going on right now. And I do think unless something major changes, we've got a great year ahead of us. But just remember, the biggest moves will come at the end. One of the reasons why humans went on to dominate the world is our ability for pattern recognition. Using the 4-year pattern revealed to us by Stock to Flow, it says we're on track for a $100,000 Bitcoin by the end of the year, with lots of upside potential in 2025. A pattern that keeps repeating and repeating and repeating is this long and boring sideways consolidation for 2 to 4 months, slowly fading down, followed by an explosive move to the upside. And so this current long, boring sideways consolidation is nothing new. As for the next 12 months, I'm personally mentally putting it into a 12-month framework, being Q1, the 3 months following the halving, which so far has always been very, very volatile until it becomes irrelevant. Q2 is when the big moves begin. Q3 is when the even bigger moves begin, and then by Q4, if history repeats, then everything will be 2 to 3 times bigger, and then we can make a solid plan to tackle 2025. So for me, unless something major happens, then we are still early, and we just need to ignore all the noise the best we can. All this up and down, all this will Ethereum get an ETF or not, approvals, rejection, Congress, debating. A year from now, all of this will likely become irrelevant. So there you are, guys. Hope you enjoyed. Now, if you have any questions or comments, let me know below. However, just remember to get rid of 100% of the comment spam and trading bots that plague YouTube comments. We are trying out the new SuperThanks Commenting system. So to get your question or comment read and replied to, or just to say thanks, then use SuperThanks below. And for now, just to say, if you did enjoy anything in the video, then drop a like, and a big thank you to everyone who does, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.